Start. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Manny here once again. Welcome to DFS Zone, your source for daily fantasy sport lineup advice for the NBA and the NFL. I got a brand new video for you, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to discuss today's 5-game slate in the association, but before I get started with today's picks, I appreciate you guys drop a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, it's your first time here, and you want to be able to get your lineup advice videos for NFL as well as NBA, the only thing you have to do to become a part of the DFS Zone community, ladies and gentlemen, is subscribe down below and make sure you turn on that bell icon. Turn that bell icon on. This way you don't miss out on any of my new uploads for NFL or NBA. All right, with that being said, today is Tuesday, November the 27th, 2018, 5-game slate in the association. Let's jump right into it, man. At point guard today, I'm going to go right down to Jamal Murray, just simply because he is at home, for one. For two, I'm not in love with his price. Obviously, Fanduel has a tendency, usually when there's smaller slates, they jump up the prices. They bump up the prices on most of the players. Mike Conley at 8,800 is a bit too much for me. I'm not willing to pay 8,800 for Mike Conley. Kyle Lowry in the same situation. I think he's fair at 7,900. I think he can get you 40 in this game, but he's going to be seeing some Conley defense. So both of them going at each other, I'll be willing to pay down. I think today is one of those days you could pay up at power forward and at center if you wanted to, or even balance out your lineup. I think you could definitely do a lineup today where you can balance out your budget in the 6 to 7K range and be able to get a number of players there. I think that will work today in this slate. But Jamal Murray at 7,300 stands out for me. I mean, granted, I would love his price to be a little lower, like 69 or 68, but at 7,300 here, he is 6,900, which I do like a little bit better on DK. He's averaging about 31 fantasy points per game. He is playing at home. Like I said, he's averaging 17 points, nearly 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and of course 31.3 fantasy points per game. In the last 4 games, he has definitely been trending upward. As you can see, he's averaging 31, and here he's basically 38, 34, 36, and 40. The minutes are there. He's starting to play massive minutes again. And on top of that, he is starting to take a little bit more shots. Let's go over to the cruncher, and that's what I like to see. And like I told you guys before, when it comes to players, we want to have someone who is an integral part of the offense, who is in a favorable matchup. And then the next thing is, we want to know, is he getting more than enough minutes, taking enough shots, and getting enough usage in the time on the floor. And Jamal Murray has been doing just that. Like I said, last 4 games, 34 or better fantasy points. The minutes are there, 36 or better over the course of those 4 games. And look at the usage rate is at 24 to as much as 27% over the last few games. Now, granted, last game out, he took 23 shots, was 9 of 23, didn't shoot particularly well from the floor or from 3, 2 of 6. But he is taking the shots that we like to see. And if we're going to pay up at that price range, we definitely want him to be over 30 minutes, and we definitely want him to be in a position to take more than 20 or 25 shots, and he's doing that. 23 shots in 6. He's taking about 15 or 16 pretty much per game, and about 5 or 6 on average over the last 6 or 7 games from 3, which we like to see. And he's capable of getting some rebounds and assists, and he has those occasional moments where he can definitely defend fairly well. So he'll get some steals and some blocks here and there, and that's all additional fantasy points for us. I definitely like Jamal Murray here. He's going up against the Lakers. He's at home. Another thing also, his home and away splits have been pretty good this year. 46% field goal percentage at home, 34% from 3, 92% from the foul line, and 32.6 fantasy points per game. Now, when you look at it and you round it out, he's only averaging 39 field goal percentage on the away, 28% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. So he is terrible pretty much on the road, but he's so good at home. He has 50-plus upside. We know that he's capable of exploding for 50, 55. And versus the Lakers, 40.5 fantasy points per game in that last game, 8 of 17, 47%. Okay, didn't shoot well from 3 in that game, as he only shot 1 of 5 from 3, which is right here. 1 of 5 from 3, but again, still 22 points from the floor. Did get 1 block and 1 steal. Last year, he put up pretty decent numbers. Right here. Last year, put up pretty decent numbers against them. In 3 matchups, he was in the green, 33, 48, and 42. So we'll take that. We'll take that. LA coming in here dead last in defending point guards thus far this year at 30th. They are giving up. They are 23rd in fantasy points per game, allow 2 point guards in the league, and they have been allowing 38.5 fantasy points per game to point guards. So, I mean, I like the matchup. I think this is a perfect game for Jamal Murray to put up 40 or 45 or 50. And like I said, he's capable of getting 40 or better. I like him there at 7,300. I'm not willing to pay up for the big guys today. But Jamal Murray is probably the highest I will go. Other than that, I mean, if you wanted to come down, you guys know I'm a New York Knicks fan. Obviously, I do like Moutier and Trey Burke again today, but I don't like their price tags of 61 and 5,700. Obviously, they're bumped up and they're priced up due to the fact that it's a 5-game slate. Reggie Jackson at 5,800 is an intriguing play here as well. So right now, I'm really undecided. Burke, Moutier, Jackson. If I'm going to want to save, I want to do Moutier at 5,700. But I'm going to go even lower than that because I got to give you guys some options, and I'm going to go to Darren Collison or Corey Joseph. Last night, Collison had the better game. Joseph didn't, but these guys have a tendency of one or the other is going to go off or do well enough. Not go off in the sense that they're going to get 40 or 50 like Collison did last night with his 40 spot, which he was his first game this year doing that. But Corey Joseph, to me, seems to be a little bit more consistent. I mean, Joseph is coming in at 4,800. So I'm going to speak on Joseph. 4,800, averaging 7 points, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 20 fantasy points per game at 4,800. You pretty much need about 24. You need 24 for him there. And on DK, he is 4,300 on DK. So, I mean, not too bad at all. But looking at the home and away splits is where I'm really more intrigued at. 51% field goal percentage, 48% from 3, 19.5 fantasy points per game for Joseph. Versus Phoenix last year, he did put up a 22 and a 29 spot against them. Collison comes in 48% this year, 26% from 3. So obviously, Joseph is shooting better from the floor and from 3 thus far this year on the road. And 24 fantasy points per game. Collison has the more fantasy points per game. But again, they're going up against Phoenix, man. And I don't know. I just kind of like the whole idea of that Phoenix is 8th right now in defending point guards. But they have given up in the last 6 games. They're allowing 44 fantasy points per game. They've been getting walloped. They gave up 21 to Derek White, which is considered pretty high. 45 for Holiday, 38 to Schroeder, in 38 and 50 in 2 games against Schroeder. 65 against Kyrie Irving, and they gave up 44 to Ben Simmons. Granted, these guys are not any Ben Simmons or Kyrie Irving or anything, or Holiday or Schroeder, but Derek White having 21, I still think at 4,900, Darren Collison or Corey Joseph, which in this case I do like Joseph a little bit better, is a better play here. And as you can see, look at the consistency with him. Definitely even possibly a good cash play with a 38-point upside is Mr. Corey Joseph. So kind of like him here a little bit better. Usage rate is not extremely high. We definitely want the 25 to 27 minutes, and he's getting that. And he's getting as high as 30 in some games. And tonight might be one of those days where you may get that 30. When he played 31 minutes the last game, he put up 38 fantasy points, 8 of 15, 2 of 3, 18 points from the floor, did have 7 assists, and did have 2 steals. As you can see, he's had pretty much 2 steals a game over the course of the last 4 or 5 games. So Corey Joseph, to me, could be the better play tonight between him and Collison, but I think they're in a favorable matchup with Phoenix having their issues with point guards. As of late, I would rather go with one of these 2 guys, but again, I also kind of like the New York Knicks players. It's just their prices a little up. Let's go to shooting guard. As shooting guard, I like my Knickerbockers here, to be totally honest with you. I'm not willing to pay for Devin Booker. Oladipo is still out. I'm going to come down to Tim Hardaway Jr. He's a little bit of a discount right now, and surprisingly, he's not bumped up in this matchup today. He's been downtrending for the last 3 games, 24, 13, and 26, but I'm not going to let that. I think Tim is going to bounce back, and at some point or another he will, because he's going to get tons of shots. He's going to get minutes. He's going to get usage rate. It's going to be there because he is our number 1 option. Tim Hardaway coming in, 23.3 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, nearly 3 assists. He doesn't really do a whole lot other than score. That's the only downfall for him. But if he goes out there and passes the ball a little bit more, gets a little bit more rebounds, he would definitely help himself out and his team a bit more. 32.8, pretty much a 33 fantasy points per game. At 7K, you need 35. On DK, he's 6,500. You need 32 there. We come over to the cruncher. And Tim Hardaway Jr., I mean, his home and away splits have been pretty decent. Not bad at all. He's shooting 42% from the floor and 37% from 3, averaging 34 fantasy points per game. And again, at that price tag of $6,005 on DK, he needs only 32 and 35 respectively on Fanduel. That's right in his wheelhouse as far as fantasy points that he is putting up when he's on the road. He doesn't have, and as you can see, he has 45-point upside, man. The minutes are there, ladies and gentlemen. The minutes are there. The usage rate is there. His usage rate is about 27, 28% on average, maybe even 29. And look at the shots. Been off. That's the reason why he hasn't had the big fantasy point totals. And it doesn't help that he doesn't go out there and rebound and get some more assists and get some steals and blocks. If he can do that, he'll definitely help his cause and help us out as far as fantasy players. But 6 of 16, 2 of 15, 8 of 19, not good at all. Look at the three-point shots. But the beauty is that he is getting shots. He's going to get usage. He's going to get the minutes. He's getting about 5 or 6, pretty much getting about 6 or 7 threes over the last 7 or 8 games on average. And look at the free throws. He's able to get to the free throw line. He's pretty good there. He's about maybe a good 85-90% shooter from the free throw line. But the rebounds and assists, he needs to do a little bit better there. If he can get a little bit more there, like he did here in this stretch here where he got rebounds and assists, he will help his cause out a lot. And then, of course, he's capable of scoring. So I expect him to have a bounce-back game here. He is going up against Detroit. Detroit right now is 4th in defending shooting guards, as you can see here, but 13th in fantasy points per game allowed. They're allowing 28.2 thus far this year to the shooting guards. They did give up 45 to Ford in the air, 47 to Josh Richardson, and 40 to Karis LeVert, which are the most notably mentioned guys here we can mention that are pretty much in similar style as Tim Hardaway. So I think he has the opportunity here to definitely get back in that 40, 45-point range here today at 7,000. I think he is a fine play for us here today. We go down. If you want to find some value, I'm going to stick with the New York Knicks again. Mr. Alonzo Trier is 3,700. I have no idea. This guy is starting to become a part of this offense here. I think the Knicks are starting to realize whom they could really go to. He played the last 2 games. I mean, granted, he's averaging 11 points, 3 rebounds, pretty much almost near 2 assists, 18.5 fantasy points per game, and they're asking 3,700 for him. 3,700 to pay for Alonzo Trier. You only need about 18, 19 minutes from him, and he's getting that already. And even if he got 15 or 16, he could still get you 1 fantasy point per minute, you're good to go. So he's 3,800 on DK, so on both platforms, pretty much about 16 or 17 will do it. That is not a bad price tag for this guy. We come over to the cruncher. We'll take a look at him a little bit more here. And as you can see, 22 and 34 minutes, 18 and 27 usage rate. Now, when he gets minutes and he's able to get some shots off, he's done very well. 9 of 12 here, 5 of 12. He took 12 shots in the 2 games back-to-back. He did take 3 threes here, buried all 3 of them, shot very well here. He's able to get to the free throw line as well. Is able to get rebounds and assists. This is what I like about this kid, where I think Mr. Tim Hardaway needs to take a page out of Mr. Trier's, play here as far as getting rebounds and assists. And then he's capable of getting a couple of steals and blocks. He got a block here. He's been able to get 3 steals and blocks here back when he was playing more consistently. I think here from this point on, he's going to definitely get anywhere between 20 to 25 minutes or better. And as long as he's getting 20 to 25 minutes or better and he's going to stay at this price range, I mean, we have to take advantage of that. He is right now at a bit of a discount. He was as high as 46 and 45, even as high as 4,700 just 5 or 6 games ago. And today he's at 3,700 after putting up 2 fantastic games in a row. So I'm going to take advantage of that price tag. He's probably the only guy I'm looking at that price tag, which is, to me, I think he should be more closer to 4. But I'll take it at 3,700. Detroit, like I said before, I gave you the statistics for Detroit. So there is opportunity there for Alonzo Trier as well as Tim Hardaway Jr. to do well here. Take your choice. You don't want Tim Hardaway. You want to pay down. I think that's a nice price for Mr. Trier. We go to small forward. I'm all over LeBron James at 11,002 against Denver. So I'm not, I'm just going to go right to him. You need pretty much 50, I think 52, 56. You need about 55, 56 pretty much for him at that price tag. We know there's not a whole lot to say about LeBron, man. We know who he is. He is the best of the best. He's been a little bit of a downtrend here, 36 and 48 the last 2 games. But nonetheless, he is going to get his shots. He's going to get usage. His usage rate is through the roof. I mean, he's pretty much going to be at 31, 32% or better. There are times that he's as high as 40, and there's going to be times he's going to take massive shots. We know he's going to get his shots. We know he's going to take some threes. We know that he gets to the foul line because of how well he gets to the basket. And then the rebounding is there, we know, and he does it all. I mean, he fills up the stat sheet. We don't need to discuss much more there. He just needs to get these shots to go down a little bit more, take actually a few more shots, and bury a few more shots. His home and away splits have been very, very good. Away, 53% field goal percentage, 40% from three, averaging about 54 fantasy points per game. He's just about right at 11,002. Like I say, he needs 55 here. On DK, he's 10,900. You pretty much need 54 there. Versus Denver, he played them one game this season, back on October the 25th, and he put up a 64 spot. And then as you can see here, last year in 2 games, 63 and 62. So he's averaging over 60 against Denver in the last 3 meetings against this team. So I love a whole lot of LeBron James today. Denver, 8th in defending small forwards, 5th in fantasy points per game allowed, which is pretty darn good. Allowing only 23 fantasy points per game, but over the last 6 games, they have not faced a whole lot of guys. James Ennis put up 30 fantasy points on them, and they faced Middleton, and they gave him 27 and 33 respectively in 2 games. But that's about it. I mean, so to face LeBron James again, I can see them having their issues with LeBron one more time. So LeBron James in play for me. If you want to pay down, obviously Josh Richardson is in a good spot against Atlanta. I think he will be a nice play. We know he is the top dog there now with all the injuries they got. And if you come down a little bit further, I mean, Mr. Prince should be in a good spot. I mean, it's hard to determine if he's going to go off or if it's going to be Mr. DeAndre Bonbry. I'm going to mention here, I gave you guys Bogdanovich last night. He played fairly well at 5,500. I think he's someone you can consider here. You could pay down in this spot here, so you could pay up at power forward and center. So Mr. Prince, I think Juancho Hernan-Gomez is definitely someone that I'm considering because he got 30-point upside and he plays more than 30 minutes. So he is a 1 fantasy point per minute kind of guy. And, if he's able to get the minutes. Now, let me take that back. As you can see, 2 or 3 games here, he did not put up 1 fantasy point per minute, but he's capable of it. He did it here, he did it here, he did it here, pretty much more or less. So, I mean, the key is that he gets the minutes. He gets more than enough minutes to be on the floor. And when you're getting 5,500, if you can get that kind of minutes, I'll be willing to have a little bit of him as well. But we're going to come down all the way to Mr. DeAndre Bonbry at 4,900. He is coming in here and pretty much just 8 points, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 22 fantasy points per game, 4,900. Pretty much need 24. On DK, he's 4K right on the nose. You need 20. But in the last 2 games, he's put up 35 and 42. So we know he has 35-point upside. At that price, that is fantastic. That's what we're looking for. He's getting sufficient minutes at least over the last 2 games. Pretty much he's at about 18-19% usage rate, which is not too bad at all for someone who comes off the bench. He's taking only about 7-8 shots a game on average pretty much here. But yes, you can see in the last 2 games, he's taken 23 shots from the floor. So he's starting to get a little bit more aggressive and becoming more offensive minded. He's taking 9 threes over the last 2 games as well. So he's just increases offensive production by just going out there and getting his shots. He gets rebounds, he gets assists, and he's capable of defending and getting those steals and rebounds, which we truly, truly love here at DFS Zone. Man, I can see this game getting a little out of hand and him getting a little bit more. I can see where Mr. Taurean Prince is not playing well enough, not shooting well enough, and Mr. Bonbry comes in there, and when he's on the floor, he makes things happen. In his amount of time that he's on the floor, he may stay on the floor a little bit longer. The matchup is there. Miami has had their issues. They're 24th in defending small forwards, 23rd in fantasy points allowed to small forwards. They're allowing 31.2 fantasy points per game during the course of the last 6 or 7 games. They did give up 72 massive points to LeBron James. Again, that is LeBron James. But they did give Bogdanovich 24 and 22 in 2 respective games against them. Joe Harris of the Brooklyn Nets put up 21. So I can see where Mr. Bonbry could put 25 to 30 on this team very easily. I like Bonbry here, and another thing also is that he is a pretty good rebounder, and Miami has had their issues with rebounding, with opponents that rebound fairly well. So I like the matchup here for Bonbry. Again, there are some other options. Trevor Ariza is not in a bad spot here against Indiana with their injuries. Let's go with a power forward. Definitely love Blake Griffin here. I think he's the best play. This is where you could pay up if you go down for a Bonbry or for Alonzo Trier. You could definitely find space to get in there, Mr. LeBron James and Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin at 9,800 here on Fanduel. You need pretty much about 48 from him. He's averaging 25, 10, pretty much 10 rebounds a game, 5 assists, 44.3 fantasy points per game. At 9,800, you need 48. On DK's 9,300, you need about 46 there, and he's averaging 45. He's been on a little bit of a downtrend, as you can see here, 40 and 31 over the last 2 games. But I'm not concerned. I like the matchup. He's in a favorable matchup today, going up against the Knicks, who have trouble with rebounding teams. And we're talking about a monster here as well as Drummond. So somebody's going to go off. It may be both of them. It may be one or the other. I'm banking on Blake Griffin here. His home and away splits, 46% field goal percentage at home, 35% from 3. He's averaging about 9 rebounds a game and 44.6 fantasy points per game. When we come and take a look at him against the Knicks, he did put up a 35 spot last year in the 1 game, but he did play well in the 2 games prior to that in 2016 and 17, which is a while back. Nonetheless, I think here just the matchup is pretty darn good. The minutes are there. The usage rate is there. We know that. He's going to take shots. All right, as you can see, he's averaging pretty much about 18, 19 shots a game, and he's actually also taking about 4 or 5, maybe as much as 6 threes per game. I would say 5 to 6 per game. And, of course, he can get to the foul line. He's not a bad free throw shooter. And then, of course, the most important thing, he rebounds, and he is capable of passing the ball as well. For a big man, that's pretty darn good. He has gone 3 games in a row where he has not had a block or a steal, but we know he is capable of getting blocks and steals. So Blake Griffin, definitely someone to consider here. And also on DK, just remember on DK, the double-double bonuses and the triple-doubles, you always got to constantly focus on some of those players. He's one of those kind of players that you want to have in your lineup if you wanted to squeeze him in, due to the fact that he is capable of getting you a double-double any game, any single day, and the same thing with Mr. Drummond. Going up against the Knicks are 19th, as you can see here, in defending power forwards this year. They're 29th in fantasy points per game given up to power forwards, especially over the last 6 or 7 games. They're allowing 38.2 fantasy points per game as of late. 74 they gave up to Anthony Davis. They did give up 48 to Spillman of Atlanta. Markieff Morris put up 38 against the Knickerbockers as well, and so did 37 from Mr. Rookie Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks. So, Blake Griffin definitely is in a good spot here. The Knicks, they are my team. I expect them to play hard tonight. They are on a 3-game win streak. Obviously, they want to go into Detroit and beat these guys, but it's going to be tough with Drummond and Blake Griffin. And, for DFS, he definitely makes one of the best sense here. Next guy that I'm considering, I am not. Now, if you're not on Blake Griffin, definitely pay down to Jaren Jackson Jr. I love his price on DK. On DK's 5,800. Now, here he's on Fanduel. I would squeeze him in some lineups, especially in the lineups that I don't use Blake Griffin. I will use Jaren Jackson Jr. But 7,100 here, you need about 35. He's averaging 13 points, pretty much 5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, pretty much 29 fantasy points per game. At 7,001, you need 35. But on DK, it's 5,800. You only need 28 there. You only need 28. And that's around his average, but look how he's been playing. 3 out of his last 4 games, he's at 35 plus. He's also has had a 50 spot, so he's shown that he has 50-point upside. He put up a 48 spot against my Knicks recently with 7 massive blocks. We come over here and take a look at him a little bit further, and the minutes are there in the last 2 games. On average, he's averaging about probably more closer to about 24, 25 minutes a game. His usage rate is good. 22 to 23% pretty much on average, maybe even as high as 24%, which is excellent for a rookie. 6 of 6 in the last game. He was 100% all the way across the board from threes and from the floor against the Knickerbockers. On top of that, he had rebounds, assists, and he had those 7 massive blocks. The only problem is this. This is why I have not chosen. This is only the 2nd time I put him in a lineup this year. It's just simply because we don't know if he's going to get into foul trouble. If he can stay out of foul trouble, and obviously the whole agenda here is for Toronto, for Siakam, is to get under the skin of this young kid and put him in position to foul. But if he's able to avoid that, he could be pretty dangerous. He can get you 50, as you can see. He can get you 40 plus. And at that price tag, especially on DK, he's definitely a must. So Jaren Jackson, if you're not on Blake Griffin, you want to pay down at power forward, I think that Mr. Jackson is a fine play. He's the last 2 games, 39 plus. He has 50-point upside. His home and away splits, very good. 55% from the floor, 43% from 3, 73% from the free throw line, and he's averaging 3 blocks per game, averaging 31 fantasy points per game at home. So he has been fantastic. Jaren Jackson, Definitely someone to consider here, folks. All right, let's go over to center. In that center today, you could easily pay up for Drummond. You could easily pay up for Gasol. I think both of them will do fine. Gasol, I told you guys I was going to be on him until he was going to be a little priced up. He was cheap. I took advantage of though. He came through all 3 times I took him during the course of this year. I think he could do fine here against Toronto as well. But 50,000 on a short, small slate like this, I'm willing to pay down a little bit. Drummond would probably be the one I would consider because he got 20-20 upside. He could get you 20 points and 20 rebounds, and he's going to be in a matchup against the Knicks where I think Cantor can do the same on him. So, but I'm willing, considering that he's 10-6 and he can get 50 or more in this game, I still think Cantor could put up 45-50, and he is much cheaper. So my recommendation is Mr. Cantor, 7,600. He is priced up due to obviously the smaller slate, and of course because he's played well as of late. 54 and 45 the last 2 games, 33 plus minutes. He's averaging 15 points, 12 rebounds. He's pretty much a double-double in the makings as well. Perfect for their DraftKings as well as Drummond. 2.5 assists, 33.5 fantasy points per game. You're pretty at 7,006. You need 37. On DK, 6,800. You need pretty much 34 there. He's averaging 35, 34 pretty much here, and 35 on DK. Go over to Mr. Cantor. And again, we have said this in the Slack group, when we discuss it. If Cantor plays 30-plus minutes, he can give us 40 fantasy points or better every single night. And I think Coach Fizdale is starting to realize now that he definitely needs Cantor in the game, especially after his last performance. He needs to be that kind of guy up front to lead this team as far as underneath the boards. He is not the greatest defender, but the guy could play offensively. He's good enough offensive center to get the job done, and he is willing to battle with anybody. And that's what makes him. He's very scrappy. So again, his price tag up $1,000 from his last game, obviously due to the smaller slate, but again also because he has played well. His usage rate is up 23 to 24 pretty much percent. He's been as high as 27, even as high as 37 in some games, but he's starting to get shots. 10 or more over the last 3 games, pretty much almost 13 or 14 shots per game over the last 3. His minutes are up. Like I said, get him over 30 minutes, coach, and he'll do fine. As you can see here, got 33, got 45. Got 41 minutes here, got 54. Got 38 minutes here, got 47. Come on. Let him play 30-plus minutes, and he will get the job done. And, hey, if he happens to shit the bed, no problem, man. There's always another game. But I think 8 or 9 times out of 10, if he's playing and he gets 30-plus minutes, he's going to be able to be efficient enough and good enough to help your team, but also for us fantasy players, he will be a nice play. He's going to eventually keep going up in price if they go over 30-somewhat minutes. So the rebounding is there, man. Rebounding, assists. And, he has a tendency of getting a little bit into foul trouble, but he's been pretty good. He hasn't fouled out. Again, I like Cantor, man. I really do. I really do like his play here. Last 2 games, 45-plus. 3 out of his last 5 games, 45-plus. Versus Detroit last year, he put up a 57 spot. Something to realize here. 56.7, that's pretty much a 57 spot. So he did have a good game last year against this team. He's shooting pretty much 56% and 82%. 56% from the floor and 82% from the free throw line, averaging 11.5 rebounds a game away from home from Madison Square Garden, averaging 34.5 fantasy points per game. So, again, give him the minutes, give him the time, he'll do fine. Detroit is 26 in defending centers, as you can see here. They're 18th in fantasy points per game allowed. They have been allowing 35.4 over the last 4 or 5 games. They did give up 60-plus to Mr. Clint Capella in 2 games out of the last 3 games that they played. They had that back-to-back. Capella put up 61 and 63 respectively. He put up some big numbers. So again, I don't see no reason why Cantor cannot put 40 or better if he gets 30 minutes or better. So Mr. Cantor is in play for me. As far as paying down or anything, if you wanted to go any cheaper, obviously you got Turner here, 6,300. You got Valanciunas. Either one of those guys, you can't go wrong. I mean, the same thing with Valanciunas. I always liked Valanciunas, but he doesn't get the minutes. If they will play this guy he's like Cantor. If they play this guy 30-plus minutes, he'll get you 40-plus fantasy points per game. He is talented enough to do that. I don't know what it is. I know you've had some injuries but I noticed that all last year as well, and it never really picked up his minutes. If he get 30 plus minutes, I think he'll be a fine play at 6,000. So definitely keep him in mind. I mean, he's averaging 27. His home and away splits have been pretty good. Away, he's 57% field goal percentage, 81% from the free throw line, averaging nearly 8 rebounds and 27.5 fantasy points per game. So again, he's a good 1 fantasy point per minute center if he gets the minutes. That's pretty much it. That's the bottom line. We could discuss anything else. Comment down below if you want to discuss any particular plays, any stacks, or anything like that. It's not the greatest slate. I think, again, ladies and gentlemen, we could discuss it in the Slack a little bit later. I really think that today you could go with a balanced lineup and do fairly well today. You don't necessarily have to go with a budget play or anybody that's bare minimum, or you don't have to go with a top tier stud. You could probably go with maybe one and be good enough. So you could go with a Drummond or a James or anything like that, and you should be okay with going everything else balanced out. But it's entirely up to you guys. I mean, I will have 1 or 2 lineups like that, and then I'm going to have some lineups, obviously, where I'm going to, target some of the better matchups as far as the games are concerned. Always try to look for a game stack as well. But again, pretty much it. We can interact with that here in the comment section. There will be another invite link here. It's daily. Every daily video, I will put a new one on there. So if anybody wants to come and join the Slack group, it's totally free. Just take the invite link, click in there, sign up if you don't have Slack, and basically you are pretty much in. All right, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video, man. Good luck tonight.